Chapter 5, Part 1, Bear Sark. Gork saw that the boy was afraid, so he took him aside and said, "This I have to tell you. Starcad is no ordinary man-boy. You must beware of saying anything to anger him." Bjorn said, "I did not mean to anger him. I was trying to mind my manners, Gork." Gork put his hand into Bjorn's hair and ruffled it. Then he shook his own head and said, "Jomsvikings are not concerned with manners, only with truth and hard dealing. Never talk to a Jomsviking just for the sake of politeness. We have sworn an oath only to say what is so, no more and no less. If Starcad says he will kill a man, then he will do that. If he says he will drink a barrel dry, then he will do that, or stand dishonoured before all his comrades." Bjorn said, "Is that what you mean by saying that he is no ordinary man, Gork?" Gork shook his head, then looked round to see if anyone was listening. Afterwards he bent over Bjorn and whispered, "Starcad is one of them, boy." He looked so wise when he said this that Bjorn was more puzzled than ever. "One of them?" he said. "What does that mean, Gork?" Gork made a strange face, then said, "God above, but you must be an outlander not to know. Then I will tell you in plain words, since you are so dull. Starcad is a bear sark, that's what. When the froth comes onto his mouth as you have just seen it, he is already at the first stage. The next stage is when he rips off his war shirt, his burnie. The third stage is when he begins to roll his eyes round and bite at things. And the last stage is when he screams out and runs at whoever gets in the way. That is a bear sark. You used to have them in Iceland. It is a terrible thing to be, but there it is. A man does not ask for it. God sends it, just as he sends thunder and lightning. So now you know." Then Bjorn understood why all the men looked up to Starcad, and why, when Starcad spoke, even Jarl Skallagrim was silent. For a bear sark was not bound by the rules that other men must obey. He was his own rule. To be a bear sark was like being born a jarl or even a king, and when it ran in families so that all the menfolk were bear sarks, that was the most frightful thing of all, for such a family was almost holy. Ordinary folk laid offerings at their door, and no bear sark ever had to do common work, like milking a cow, cutting turf or ploughing a field. There was a saying among the folk of Hedeby at this time, "Better a burgher than a beggar, but better a bear sark far." After this, whenever Starcad spoke to Bjorn, the boy felt that he was listening to words from the other world, where thunderbolts were forged in the fire and lightning was hammered bright by Thor. That night, while the herring smacks were out, the Jomsvikings hauled down their striped sail and folded it carefully. They unstepped the mast as well, and laid it on deck so that they should not be seen from the high village. Then every man put on a grey cloak and hood over his helmet and mesh burnie, so that moonlight should not glint on them. When they rowed inshore, they wrapped old sheepskins round the oar blades so that the water should not clap onto the ashwood and make a noise to give warning of their coming. Gork lent Bjorn a little cloak and hood, and found a black oak sea spike for him to carry like a sword. Though to tell the truth, Bjorn had little enough wish to go ashore hurting anyone at that time. He was still too full of remembering how his father had been hurt, and even how bad Glam had been tied up in the rock pool for the sea to smother unless someone saved him before the tide came in. But after they had pulled Reindeer up into a little stream and covered her over with gorse and salt grasses, Bjorn felt himself getting more and more excited. He told himself that he would just go ashore with the Jomsvikings, but would take care not to hurt anyone. Gork took him aside and said quietly, "Keep out of Starcad's way, lad. The froth is on his lips again. Once he sees the thatch burning, he will not know whether you are fish, fowl or good red herring. Give him best as the others do. There must be a clear space round him, or we'll be short of a crew tomorrow." The boy answered, "I will keep by you then, Gork." But Gork shook his head. "Nay, lad, that you must not do, for my place is close to Starcad. I go 3 paces behind him to guard his back. That is why they call me the Guardian. I am Starcad's guardian, the eyes in his back to keep anyone coming at him from behind while he is at work." Bjorn had often heard the shipmen calling Gork Guardian, but he had thought little of it at that time. Indeed, he had thought they meant that Gork looked after the butcher's meat on the voyage, no more. Now this was answered in his mind, and suddenly he turned and said, "Are you a bearsark too, friend?" But Gork the Guardian smiled and shook his head. "Only halfway there," he answered, "and that is just as well, for two bearsarks together do not last very long. They only face one way, and each tries to outdo the other. That is when they fall, when their pride blinds them and they cannot see the wood for the trees." Bjorn gazed up at him and said, "You talk like a woodcutter, not a Jomsviking, Gork the Guardian." The man laughed and said, "What we chop down are no trees, little one. But my meaning was that a bearsark will run among hosts of men, though they be as thick planted as a forest around him. That is when he ends, when there are trees behind him as well as in front of him. Now you understand?"